Okay, here we are.
Another week.
Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Another week, another month goes by.
it is
So
amazing.
fast.
It's amazing to me how quickly, and it's true. You know, they say it's true, but when you're 1 year old, you've got 100% of your life within a year. When you're 50 years old, you've got 1/50th in a year. So time to start, it's like boom, boom, boom. It's amazing how fast time goes.
Yep.
So anyway, haikus this month. What some great haikus we have.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm always impressed. And this month, more than ever, for me anyway, the pictures that went with the haiku were so informative. They were just so congruent and supported the haiku so well.
Now,
I think,
which of yours, Michael? I mean, I did my high bun on the sunflowers, so because that's what some of the quotes on the envelope kind of referred to the sunflowers. So I thought maybe that was some guidance.
what's happening is that I'm becoming if I could give my whole life to sending out these haikus to everyone and doing this, I do it. It's like it's become kind of a fun little thing. But anyway, we'll talk about all that later, perhaps. But it's interesting. Yeah, the high bun, the haiku. Anyway,
It was like a practice. I felt like your second one was like a invitation to a reflective practice.
it is. Well, it's a practice for me, and it's interesting. I emailed Mason Curry. Mason Curry wrote these books. I'm not sure I have one right here about daily rituals, and he goes through all these artists and people. So I'm reading that book, one of those every day. So I sent him a note because I want to buy his next book, and it was something confusing on where he bought it. But he wrote it back and he said, "How nice that you're making reading my book a ritual of your day," which is true. I have, and so I just bought his next book because I'm really interested in rituals. But this whole haiku thing is just a ritual, just a daily ritual, and it's a meaningful one. So I tell you what, we've got haikus. And I have them in a little file so we can look at them as the author's reading them. And I have Davin's first. Is that okay if we do that?
Go for it.
Sure.
Let me see let me just put this up. Can you see it?
There it is.
So the routine's for Davin to read it, and then for us to read our narrative, and then for Davin to read his, that kind of thing. Okay.
Sounds
Take it
good.
away, Dr. Carr-Chellman.
All right. Fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, kindness, self-control, aspirational delights. And then fruits of the Spirit is a concept from Galatians, so that's why that's there.
Nice. Amy, you want to go first, or you want me to?
Why don't you go first so I can pull it up here? With this
Okay.
unit.
So here's what I had to write about this haiku. The image associated with Davin's haiku was so powerful. The contrast between dark and light, dead and alive, clouds and clear skies, a scraggly and leafless tree versus green leaves could not have supported the haiku better. The line between the two visions caught my vision. Is it an either or, green or brown world? Is it a line that separates? Is it one that must be stepped over? Can there be gradations, or is there only in or out when it comes to life? The title of the haiku, Fruits of the Spirit, made the connection between image and words. The fertile fields of our lives bear fruit when connected to what feeds them, to the nutritious, organic, and yet mysterious spirit. Like all that grows and is fed, these delicious fruits, joy, love, kindness, self-control, require continual care, weeding and feeding and aerated to come to full bloom. And yet, the haiku suggests, there is always more fruit to be picked.
Darn aspirational stuff. Spend 90% of my life there.
In aspiration?
Yeah.
Well, that makes you an inspiration for us.
Well, mine goes right along with that aspirational idea. So I thought it might be interesting to see the definition of aspirational. The Cambridge Dictionary defines aspirational as showing you want to have more money, power than you currently have. It's interesting that showing is included in the definition. Aspirational is not a secret thing. It's something that is shown. It's demonstrated through how we live. The question is, how do we live our lives showing that we desire more love, joy, kindness, self-control? And if we live so boldly as to show, not tell, aren't we really living and growing the fruits of the Spirit?
Wow, what a great hook. That definition, that was wonderful.
It's so interesting sometimes to just go and look up words that you think you know,
Yeah.
and it just always kind of reframes it for me.
Yeah, that's great. And that so I think that, yeah, I mean that really wasn't an overt intention, but that captures it so nicely, I think. How cool.
To go boldly. I like that.
To go boldly. Yeah, to show that you. Yeah. All right, there are 9 fruits of the Spirit. I should mention my high bun this month are a little darker maybe than usual, so I'll apologize up front for that. There are 9 fruits of the Spirit as highlighted in Galatians: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I remember when the concept of fruits of the Spirit was first introduced to me. I was young, but old enough for the idea to resonate and stick. In particular, it was liberating and life-giving to know that I didn't have to become all these wonderful things entirely of my own volition and willpower. They were fruits of the Spirit, not fruits of Davin. I also remember thinking how much I wanted to share all these traits and in turn have them shared with me. At the same time, over the years, I have experienced an intimate connection between my decisions and actions and the reality of, say, love, or the reality of self-control in my life. You are what you repeatedly do. It's an Aristotelian maxim that we used as a motto in our household here in our family, not my family of origin, but this family here now. And it applies well to the fruits of the Spirit. To experience love, be loving, and so on. This variability highlights my backsliding nature, though. Sometimes I'm on the right side of things. Sometimes I'm on the wrong side of things, in the dim places. I don't worry or feel badly about this. It's the nature of relationships, and the fruits of the Spirit are relational ways of being. They require certain kinds of relationships with other people, and a certain kind of relationship with God, and I think a certain kind of relationship with oneself. And we can't have these kinds of relationships all the time. There's a dark side to us, and the fruits are a bellwether for how well we're doing, I think.
Wow.
So a little darker, not quite as upbeat, but it felt real to me.
That's very good.
The word backsliding somehow relates. I can relate to backsliding very easily.
We all can.
Oh, that's beautiful. I loved it. I loved the photo, and I just thought it was just so illustrative of what you're talking about.
Yeah, very, very stark, the dichotomy between the dark and the light.
There is. It's plays out in every single of those the big trilogy movies, and dark and light, and the Force and the the farce, whatever, there's.
I think it's something that's in our DNA. I think it's in our DNA. It's always been that way.
Do you think it's either or?
Not in reality, but I think in terms of our decisions on what we do at any given point in time, either or is helpful. So I'm always looking at the Psalms, and they're very stark, in how they paint the darkness and light, which actually connects, I think, right to Amy's haiku.
Yeah.
At least as I read it.
It's such an interesting. It's such an interesting thing. I'm watching. My whole life can be told by the TV series that I watch. Anyway, I'm watching Longmire, and I've watched it. This is my second time I've watched Longmire. And if you haven't seen it, he's a contemporary sheriff, I think, in Montana, and he's a man's man kind of guy, but filled with character. I mean, just character in the middle of all the stuff going on. And yet he has his own complexity involved in that. It's not just either or. And so even though he makes either or decisions, mostly, there's still some complications to the story that we all have. Life isn't as neat as we would like it to be. And then if you start getting in, all the different kinds of pushes and pulls in life, this is right for this, but that doesn't make it so good for that, which makes it not so good for that, which makes it good for, all those things. It's like, wow. And yet, Longmire always makes the right choice, just about always. He always.
Well, the good folks of Absaroka County, Wyoming would be deeply offended that you've relocated them somewhere in Montana.
Where is Absaroka County?
I think it's fictional. I actually don't know if it's real or not, but I bet I've watched every episode of Longmire 2 or 3 times. Probably.
Yes, I love it.
I've heard of this show, so apparently I need to catch up.
It's a great show, and my wife. This is, I'm such a backslider. My wife, when she was in Philadelphia, it's now been 4 or 5 years. When they spent 9 months in Philadelphia, she knew I was watching Longmire at the time. But she brought back. Someone had given her a 4-set series of the books to read, because she knew I was interested in Longmire. Well, of course, I've had them in my bookcase for the last 4 or 5 years, and so I just pulled them out this month to start reading them.
It's
like,
always
cool.
comes at the right time.
It's true. I've got books in my bookshelf that have been sitting there just waiting for the right time. So let's go to Amy.
All right.
So let me show both of these so people can see them. We'll probably talk about both of them, but here's the front side of Amy's. And here's the back side, and her, the other side of her card are just as wonderful as the front side. So we'll come to that.
All right. So mine was soul light. In the dim places, we bring our soul light to shine. Small actions shine bright.
Nice. Davin, you want to take this one?
Yeah. Dim places. The 2 words together call to mind ancient language about the places nobody wants to go, or the places we want to send our enemies, or the places bad people go when they finally get what's coming to them. It can be roughly synonymous with a low place, a dark place, a dry place. These are places where trees don't grow, water's hard to find, and the things that make life worth living are stunted or non-existent. It's not just that you can't see in a dim place, it's that the essence of light, the essence of life, light, illumination, the sun, the source of energy, the motivating underlying principle of life is weakened. Mm-hmm. The writer of Psalm 1 equates this source of life with the actions of those who are happy and good. They are like trees planted by streams of water, the psalmist says. which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. Ecclesiastes, that early Hebrew existentialist, said, wisdom is better than might, yet the poor man's wisdom is despised and his words are not heeded. The quiet words of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouting of a ruler among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one bungler destroys much good. Dim places need good, wise people. Small actions shine bright. Soul light is not just a concept. Soul light is real. It is how we make the world better. Small actions, soul light, might be easily ignored. You might even find yourself despised, but it is the true generative work of a well-lived life.
Wow. Such nice use of words in there.
So the passage from Ecclesiastes was sort of part of my usual sort of morning routine study, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago. And when I read your haiku, it just popped into my head. I wasn't even sure what the relationship was, but it was like right there. And I thought, it's got to be in there somewhere.
That's so interesting. I love it when the synergy of what you're reading and what life is, when it comes together. I always try and be aware of that. So I love that connection.
Yeah.
You know, so much of that can be missed if we're not paying attention. You know, it's like, just paying attention. So I want to, just a side note, I want to be sure and write down at some point that book of Psalms that you study. Even that old book that you were showing us, it just seems to me like I like old books. I mean, I like books that have stood the test of time. So I want to know what the Psalms book is. So here's what I wrote about Amy's haiku. Again, I start with the picture. I don't know why, but first, the picture of the light through clouds immediately drew me into this haiku. Second, the title, Soul Light, was both provocative and immersive at the same time. I wanted to know more about soul light, not just intellectually, but also experientially. What is soul light? Is it an inner spirit, the Holy Spirit? Is it at our core individually? Does it reside there, available to provide illumination always if we just wait for the clouds covering it to blow away? Third, the haiku itself brought me from the immensity of a sun down to the tiny, small actions that we engage in to bring some light ourselves. Even, as Amy suggests, during the dark times, when light fails to break directly through to us, we have our own light we carry with us always. It's a soul light, spelled S-O-U-L, a soul light, S-O-L-E, a soul, open quote, S-O-L, close quote, light. It's a soul light, a soul light, a soul light.
Wow.
I sure like that. I just like that piece.
So much to think about in what both of you have said. So mine was inspired by a quote from Joan Chittister. Her quote was, "Our role in life is to bring the light of our soul to the dim places around us." I'm not sure exactly where I read that, but it just stayed with me, jumped off the page. And I find that most of my haikus I've been writing from, inspired by different poetry and quotes. So this I knew was going to be a haiku. So dim is such a descriptive word and not one that gets used a whole lot. Dim feels more relatable than darkness. Say the dark night of the soul, for example. Dim, not quite light, not quite fully dark. it's much more descriptive of how life really is, while in places in our lives, those places that it's not fully dark or unseen, it's just hazy and clear, a bit hard to see and to navigate. Life is rarely black and white. It's most often shades of gray, dim. In the dim light, it just takes a little light to change the lighting. Short and simple.
Yeah, very, very, very doable thing, right?
Yeah.
The soul light, the small action. This is not a heavy lift.
Right. Exactly.
But it's so important.
Yeah, it's funny that back to the either or equation. People think if I can't do something heroic or do something, it's not worth it. It's like voting, my vote doesn't count. But it's the little things every day that compound themselves.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I want to put up Amy's second page before we move on to the next one, just so anybody seeing this will know what it looks like. So this is what Amy has on her second page, and there's the quote by Joan Chittister.
I sent my haiku postcard to her this month.
Oh, did you?
Awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
found her address of where she lives. I thought, well, I'll just send it.
I love that.
Is she still in Erie, Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
I've got 3 or 4 of her books. She's wonderful.
I've been to her lately, so.
When I was at Penn State, she used to come visit because she's a Benedictine religious, and the Benedictines ran the Catholic campus ministry at Penn State.
Interesting.
So
I get her little, I don't know, they send those things out in email every once in a while, and like you say, I've got 2 or 3 of her books, and 3 or 4 of her books, maybe more, I'm not sure. And she's just a constant source. Her story, she's just very interesting, and I think gets to the core of what's most important.
Wow.
So anyway, I love this from Amy, and so down here, folks should know for sure that you can go right here and get what she writes about. So, and she always has questions. That's part of the art of powering down. So. So is it me?
Thanks for the shout out.
Oh,
yes.
Hey, I follow your stuff every time you send something out.
Thank you.
So here's the haiku. Drooping sunflowers exposed in ceaseless swelter, still they face the sun.
Is that a photo that you took?
It is a photo that I took. I'll tell you a little more about it here in a minute.
Okay.
You can go ahead, Amy.
All right. We are past the bright, hopeful days of summer with lush green yards, seemingly sparkly trees, and bright rainbows of flowers. Everything is hot, droopy, and stressed. We are in a season of fading, and yet the sunflowers. There's something so hopeful about sunflowers. They face the sun with such a proud stance. As other plants seem to fade and wilt, sunflowers thrive in the heat and sun. They show us what is possible. They face the sun and they reflect the sun with their bright yellow leaves. There is a bold bit about the sunflowers. As other more delicate flowers wilt, the sunflower says, "I see you, sun. I feel your heat, but it only makes me bolder." Sunflowers are always flowers of hope for me. They face the sun, they reflect the sun, they stand tall and thrive in the heat. Little suns against the blue skies.
Nice. Little suns against the blue skies.
Oh, the resolute resistance to the end of the season.
Yeah. So well put.
All right. Reading this poem, I can't help but analogize or parabolize the sunflowers as humanity. Especially right now, 6 months into COVID, or however many months it is. I think it's still March, isn't it? We're all drooping, overly ready to be relieved of the burden. And still we face the sun, the relentless elements working at us day after day. but really, what are our options? I remind myself that the only alternative to being a drooping sunflower this late in the season is to not be a sunflower at all. It's a non-negotiable trait of existence for a sunflower in September, in Ohio anyway. A sunflower refusing to face the sun isn't a sunflower, at least not for very long. Similarly, I've heard my dad say that life is a terminal condition. We can ignore our increasing droopiness and the pains of ceaseless exposure for only so long. We all must continue facing the sun. The only alternative to this reality isn't really a reasonable option. In the midst of these dark thoughts about the inevitable suffering of living, flashes of the Velveteen Rabbit cross the screen in my mind. For the toy rabbit, the very thing that rubbed off its fur and stretched its threads was the very thing that brought the most meaning and value to life, the love of a child. I hope when it's all said and done that I've loved and been loved so much that the ceaseless swelter and toll of the years will have seemed like a reward, not a punishment.
Beautiful.
So Amy, if you haven't seen it, Davin has a really fine essay on the Velveteen Rabbit in the Profound Living blog.
Oh, I'll have to find it.
And I think the title is "What is Real?" I think is that what he called it.
Mm.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. So here's what I write. So this haiku evolved, and this is to, answer your question really, kind of, Amy. This haiku evolved, and I can't remember exactly how, but the catalyst was these sunflowers, which I see often on daily walks. I'm from Kansas, the sunflower state, so I have an affinity for them. I originally took a picture of these and posted them on my Facebook page. I can't remember if I'd written this haiku before or after that, but I soon realized my original picture wasn't very good. So once I decided to make a card using these, I went back and took the one you see. The picture of the single sunflower is one I'd taken earlier because I thought it was just so beautiful. That's on the other side of the card. Because I thought it was just so beautiful, right? That's it. They can't see it though because they're looking at me. I'll put it up later. The haiku, along with the sunflowers, is a metaphor for, back to what Davin was talking about, is a metaphor for the world during this challenging year of pandemic and troubles. What is this sun? I leave that open to the reader. It may differ for each person. Regardless, even during days of shadow, there is a sun. There are rainbows. Unearned gifts surround us, which enrich our lives, whether we perceive them or not. They shine on us and engender and enlighten us, whether we notice them or not. In fact, though it is indiscernible on the printed card, the moon is faintly visible in the upper right-hand corner of the picture. The almost invisible light of the moon, a reflection of the sun, also illuminates even when we're not facing it. This haiku suggests to me that paying attention to the light during these difficult times can keep nourishing us through daily toils and troubles.
Wow.
So there's that. So I'll just show you the other side since we referred to it. So up here, you can see it here. You see that little dot right there?
Yeah, it's easier to see on the screen than even I'm holding my original card.
You can't see it on the card, can you? Or
No.
it just kind of looks like a dot, but that's the moon right there. Same picture, looking back the other way. And so that's the sunflower. So that's it.
Nice. Good work, friends.
Always so amazing, beautiful, enlightening, fun.
I know. I love the combination, the pics and the conversation, everything. Anyway, thanks everyone. On to haiku. Haiku on. Haiku on. It sounds like a practice. Haiku on. Bye.